numerator, but you cannot have a 0 in the denominator. So set your factors equal to 0. So you cannot have a 3 or a negative 3. No inequality here. And then give me your restricted domain. In a radical, that's the second domain restriction. In a radical, underneath the radical cannot be negative. This can be a 0. You can take the square root of 0. So set this greater than or equal to 0. When you divide by a negative, don't forget to switch your sign. Now, the only other one that you'll get is putting this in a denominator. And what's the only difference when I put this radical in the denominator? How will my answer change? How will my domain change? Get it? It won't be equal to 0, so what will my domain look like? Good. It will have a soft bracket, because then this won't have an equal sign here. So that is the third restriction. It wasn't your original, I just changed it.
How come there's no negative 5 to positive infinity?
Negative 5 to positive infinity. So if you put a positive, did you forget to flip the sign?
No,
So and test it. Here's your number line. Test it. So if you took a number like 10 and you did negative 5 minus 10, this is going to give you negative 15. And that we can't do. We use real numbers except when we do quadratics a little bit, then we'll use the imaginary number just for one little section. Everything else is automatically real numbers. Here's a denominator. So set my factors equal to 0 and pull out the factors that will make my denominator 0. So you have quite a bit to pull out. So start from your left, negative infinity to negative 4, jump over it, 4 to 0, negative 4 to 0, jump over it, 0 to 4, jump over that, and 4 to infinity. I didn't want you to solve, just give me domains. Again, here's a radical. A radical says this cannot be negative in here. It can be a 0, so set this greater than or equal to 0. Good. We constantly look at domains in here, constantly. And another good way to look at that is graph it. Graph it in your calculator. It's a function. I can absolutely graph this in my calculator. It may take a little longer in my calculator, but we can graph. So if you graph this, the calculator is always challenging. And you should be able to see from your table what you can and cannot use. So when you go to your table, negative 2 works because of the 0. God bless you. Negative 3, negative 4, negative 5 does not work. So it's a nice way to check to see, did you actually get your domain? Check it on your calculator. I'm big on checking on the calculator. It's the easiest way to look at something. Again, we have a fraction, so we have a problem with the denominator. We set it equal to 0. We find the factors that would make this be 0. So we have to take out a negative 3 and a 4 from our domain of real numbers. So our restricted domain says negative infinity to negative 3, jump over it, negative 3 to 4, jump over it, 4 to infinity. Are the domains starting to make a little bit more sense? Usually, like by the 3rd or 4th week, I see kids think, that's all there is to it? That's all I had to do? Yep. A radical, again, a radical greater than or equal to 0. Find your critical numbers, because you have a quadratic. So on our quadratic, we say, okay, this is a parabola. It's passing through this way. So I can see where my y's are positive, I can see where my y's are negative, and I can see where my y's are positive. And I want the positives. So I'm looking at this from here to here. And again, you can put this in your calculator. You can even put this on Y1, this on Y2, see where they cross. You can just move it to one side and graph it, just because you're looking for your domain. And see what checks out. Is everybody okay with this? You remember to do the quadratic and the radical? It gives you more than just two restrictions. Okay. Remember, there's no restriction on an odd index, only on an even index. Just remember the denominator cannot be 0 if it's in a denominator, if it's in a fraction. That's the only problem. If you did this, the cube root of x has no restriction. This does. What can x not be? 0. So this says you can use everything but 0. Give me any other number but 0. Good? Questions at all on the domains? No? Okay.
So what